purpose of this video is to talk about what I had to do to get this SAM-5 to be at the level of other super modern AKs, or in other words, the level of just a regular old AR-15. First I'll do a rundown of the stripped rifle and some of the things that had to go into modding that, and then I'll talk about the Sureshot Mark III chassis, and then I will launch into this RS Regulate and Ultimak setup. The reason that I switched from the Sureshot over to this is I did have some impact shift problems with the Sureshot chassis. I will attribute that to my chassis being a pre-production prototype from Sureshot for milled guns. At the end of the video here, I'll also give a quick breakdown for any of these specific parts on either of these builds, if there were any questions about that. Although they're expensive, the Arsenal SAM-5 series are some of the best AKs you can get on the American market today, whether it's chambered in a NATO caliber or otherwise. They will take whatever you throw at them, and more. If you can deal with a little extra weight, these rifles are absolute beasts. That being said, these guns have a number of quirks if you want to re-outfit them with modern parts and run them with things other than a short handguard and a fixed stock. Some of those quirks come from the Type 3 milled receiver, and then some come from just Arsenal's choices in designing this rifle, like the muzzle pitch, but you can work around just about most of it outside of the weight. So here I'd like to pass along some of the things I learned while making my SAM-5 a modern rifle that you'll have to live with too if you want to do something similar. So starting in the rear, milled AKs generally have a upper and lower tang on them that are not easily removable unless you just take a saw to them, which is what I did here. This is an Ace double star adapter. You cut your tang on the top off, and you cut your tang on the bottom off and file them flush. And then this bolts in to the gun with a single big bolt in the back there and two washers to keep it stable. And this opens up options for mounting sling QD cups on either side, as well as it has this channel and screw holes here to take a variety of aftermarket stock accessories. The side mount on these is going to be standard AK, so there's nothing you have to change there if you're going to do a side mounted build with this. The safety, it will accept standard AK safeties, unlike a traditional AK that is stamped, where you have this protrusion right here to stop the safety. The SAM-5 series has a pin right here that protrudes a little further out than the safety has to stop on. The problem with that is that a lot of aftermarket safeties are rounded on the inside here where the metal was folded over, and when they hit that pin, if you're throwing them with any kind of force at all, they'll just ride off the side of the gun, kind of like you see the AK-12 do. To prevent that, I 3D printed a small part that is basically just a circle that cups around it, and then dremeled it off to be the exact perfect angle, JB welded it on. So the safety hits that and stops, and that has plenty of surface area to stop it from riding off the gun. The SAM-5 is actually compatible with WBP spec bolt carrier groups, although I believe the bolt is a different spec. So what that means is, if you don't want to mess with your original carrier group and you want to KNS it like on this one, you can take a WBP bolt carrier group, drop your bolt in, and then put a KNS piston on the actual WBP carrier. That also helps with aftermarket support if something happens to your bolt carrier group. One thing to be aware of with milled guns is that on a Type 3 pattern receiver, your handguard retainer is going to be the same here as it would be with any other AK, but the receiving socket in the receiver itself right here is going to be smaller. What this means is that you can modify any AK pattern handguard to fit if you just file the back end down, or you can buy milled receiver specific stuff that will be sized to fit that hole specifically. The front end here remains entirely unchanged. The gas tube itself is also otherwise unchanged from regular AK spec, and handguards, upper handguards, should be interchangeable all the way through. Now, the muzzle threads on these guns are going to be 14x1 left hand, which is the same spec as an AKM, which means you have a lot of aftermarket support for those, but also if you want to mount a suppressor off that muzzle device, you need to go with a face mount. Additionally, because they're 7.62 native as a 14 left hand thread, you're going to see that a lot of muzzle devices have an internal bore size big enough to fit a 7.62 caliber cartridge, so they're not going to be as tight around the bullet. For a muzzle brake, you'll lose a little bit of gas down the straight center of the bore, rather than all of it hitting the baffles and going out to the side. Which is why when I had this one cut down, I had it cut to an AR-15 pattern 1/2x28 thread. The front sight posts for these guns with the traditional 16-inch factory barrel are pretty normal affair. You've got the pin detent to hold on any muzzle device, but that also means that because this is just pinned in place, you shouldn't be mounting any kind of muzzle device on here that indexes off the face of this, because this can move and then your suppressor can lose concentricity. As of where face mount is going to give you an index off the barrel itself and not rely on this that can be out of alignment. Now, if you chop your gun down like this, you will have to open the gas port up unless you plan on running a suppressor all the time. Even with this Rifle Dynamics adjustable gas block and the K&S piston, if I hadn't opened that up, I would need a suppressor to run this gun. The bore in this is not guaranteed to be concentric, which is just an Eastern European thing. So if you want to run a suppressor and get this cut down, you will have to pay extra to have the barrel entirely removed from the gun so that the threads cut actually match the bore itself, not the outside length of the barrel. Alright, so here is the SAM-5 in a Sureshot Mark III chassis. This one has the slim mounting piece here, but the full-size handguard, so it will accept a slim handguard if I wanted to do that. The Sureshot chassis here is a 5-piece design. It's got the rear dust cover, the top rail, which extends from here all the way to the front and then mounts on the internal gas tube they supply. There's the handguard, and then there's the mounting bracket. The handguard on this one is 5 slot rows, and there's 5 of those rows around the handguard here. It's also got lightning cuts along the handguard and vent holes throughout. This one's a bit of a screw hell. It's fastened to the gun using the mounting piece here. This has a screw coming up from the bottom to hold it in, 2 in the sides on each side, and then it's got 6, 3 per side, holding the piece here into the top rail, as well as 2 that hold the top rail into the gas tube. So if you start to lose some of those screws due to that Loctite burning off as AKs get nice and hot, this will start to lose 0 on you. It makes for a pretty streamlined package overall. Height over bore is not as bad as using something like a side mount, as the dust cover is replaced entirely. It doesn't have to ride on top of one. I will say that the Picatinny on the top of the gun could be a little longer. See, this mounting bracket for a QD is moved back as far as it possibly can. There's no additional picks cut right there. And then same on the front, you could probably sneak one more in there if you really wanted to. It's a little heavy, but that's something you deal with when you're shooting a milled AK in general. Although I'm having a few issues with it. Once I can get this thing back to holding 0, this will be the mainstay on the gun again. This setup is extremely streamlined, and the weight is more so the gun's fault than the chassis, and the chassis doesn't necessarily help. It is probably the best modern solution out there for one streamlined package to get everything done up on this rifle. Alright, live and direct coming at you from the range, post shooting this thing for the first time set up like this. What surprised me the most, I think, is how close it felt to the Sureshot when you actually got to shooting and function. It does feel a little different when you're looking for differences, but in how you grab it, how you run it, it feels just like that full chassis system. It's very streamlined and very easy to work with. You get index point right where you want it. The dot doesn't feel to be in a strange place, even though it's riding technically a little higher. The one thing that I did notice time and time again is that the heat is going to be a huge issue with this. Sureshot most definitely spoiled me to where I could run mags and mags and not really ever have to worry about gloves. As of this, you finish one magazine and yeah, you better put a glove on. Quick note, unshielded Ultimak in less than a magazine, and about a magazine, even though it's drills and I'm taking little breaks here and there. This is touchable, but not comfortable, that's for sure. Any more and it's gonna be a little too much gloveless. This bar right here specifically is a nice little thing that your hand wants to ride on and grip around, and it's going to burn the crap out of you if you put more than 30 rounds over the course of a few minutes through it. The RS Regulate handguard isn't as bad, but it also has a similar problem. It mounts right here onto the handguard retainer, and because of that, the barrel transfers heat to the handguard retainer transfers heat to the handguard itself. So you feel that too. I'm not sure if the heat shield in here helps at all, but even if it does, it's direct contact that's heating this thing up, not necessarily heat radiating off the barrel.
Pretty pleased with how this ran. I didn't see any kind of zero shift loading into the handguard because obviously the handguard system is detached from the side mount up on top of the gun. So even though I have a whole new setup less than a week out from Masters, it doesn't feel like I'm taking a step back from what I've been training on. It feels a whole lot like what I'm used to. So I'll see if a handguard wrap can buck that heat issue, but I'm actually pretty satisfied with this compared to the SAM 5 chassis. Not saying it's better, but for a decently smaller price tag, it feels almost the exact same ergonomically when I'm going to shoot. And I think that's what matters. You can really hung up on how things look and feel when you're not at the range, but when you're behind the gun, does it behave like you want it to? And this behaves just like the Sureshot chassis when I'm actually shooting, other than some of those zero shift issues I've been seeing.
Alright, to start it off, this is the Lage stock and cheek piece, as well as their folding adapter here. I like this a lot. It's better than the A3 triangle stock I was running beforehand. The butt pad is a nice size, the cheek riser feels good, the plastic does not feel flimsy. I also have a little sling mount on the side there. The optic rail I'm using is an AK Master mount. It's what I had laying around. I probably would have preferred an RS Regulate for weight and for modularity, but I already had one of these and it was close enough. Aimpoint Duty RDS, it's okay. I don't much care for the controls, and the non-standard height on this really can throw off when you run it with a magnifier sometimes, but it is what it is. It's still, as far as red dots go, clear and durable, so that's what really matters the most. Next up is the Carolina Shooter Supply charging handle. These are 25 bucks a piece, and they're just secured on by one set screw in the front. I think they're pretty good. I run these on both my AKs, and my buddy runs one on his too. Like any of these charging handles, they do have a tendency to fly off into the woods, but just keep an eye on it and tighten it down. Loctite and lots of torque keep these on your gun. They are really, really good, light, and cheap upgrades for rifles. The RS Regulate handguard is the 10-inch AK stamped gun spec. They shipped me the wrong one, so I just filed it down to fit in the receiver. This is also the double M-lock slot, not the lighter open top one. The Ultimak tube is the non-ported one, so there were no brakes to let gas out of it. This is a Rifle Dynamics gas block. It's adjustable from the front. It'll fit 90 and 45 degree cut AKs, but the carbon fouling is going to get back into whichever port you're not using and plug it up. Once you put on a gun and shoot with it, you're probably stuck with that gas port cut angle. I picked this because it was user serviceable. It's got two screws at the bottom to hold it in rather than pins, so if I need to take it off for any reason to get into the gas port, which I have done before, I can just do that rather than taking it to a gunsmith and getting the regular one pressed off. The muzzle is an SLR Rifleworks Atlas compatible muzzle. I would have preferred Reardon, but it wasn't in stock, and so this is all that I had. When this gets carbon fouled, living under my suppressor, it makes it hard to get that can off. The can, basically, the threads on it have to cut through the carbon because it's a little too fat up on the front. Otherwise, it controls recoil pretty good. It's lightweight. Would have preferred Reardon, but as far as this goes, can't complain too much. The light setup is an Arasaka 300 rig that I won in a raffle at a match. 300 body, one of their offset mounts. The head is a Malkov V2, and then a Surefire UE tail cap and tape switch. The mounting piece here for the tape switch is a 3D printed one I found online because I was just testing stuff out, didn't want to pay for anything quite yet. I'll replace it at some point, but for now it's worked fine. I just have some goon tape holding it on. It ain't gonna go anywhere too bad. And then it also came with a scope cap from a local North Carolina company called Scope Bumper. I've had no problems with this. It is holding up to the muzzle blast here, unsuppressed, perfectly. The heat shield wrap here is one that my fiance and I made a few days ago. It is just a couple layers of Desert Night camo that came off an old surplus jacket that I had cut the fishtail off of, tied on with paracord. I wanted to run my slate black vertical grip, but it didn't fit in the same place I wanted it to because the M-lock slots are aligned differently on this compared to the Sureshot. So this is just a Magpul foregrip that has been cut off to take some of the space that I didn't need off, because all I'm doing is just pulling it into me. There is no wraparound, so I don't need any of this crap off the back. hand-me-down pistol grip. These are fantastic, and I can't complain about anything about it. And then Hyperfire trigger, I won at last year's AK Masters, and a matching safety. You don't necessarily need Hyperfire safety to go with the trigger, but it helps installation a lot. Also got a QD socket right here. I don't know what brand it is, but it's the same design as every other QD socket in the market for M-LOK. It's anti-rotation. I had been using this rail-mounted Grove Tech one. I don't necessarily like this one because it isn't anti-rotate, so your sling can just kind of go wherever it wants.